I still remember the rain that night, how it washed away my world in a single moment. The sound of his laughter still echoes in my ears, though I buried him months ago. I grieved like a widow without ever becoming a bride. My heart shattered into pieces that refused to heal. But just when I thought I had accepted his death, a single message appeared on my phone, his name glowing on the screen, the words impossible to deny. He wasn't gone. He had lied. And suddenly, my sorrow burned into something far darker. Welcome to the Untold Love. If you believe every heart holds a secret story, subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. They say some people walk into your life quietly, almost like a whisper, and yet they change everything you thought you knew about love. For me, that whisper was him. I still remember the very first moment our eyes met. It wasn't a grand, dramatic scene like in movies. It was simple. Almost ordinary. But in that simplicity, I felt something stir in me, something I couldn't name at that time. It was at a cafe near the old library. I had been lost in a book, sipping coffee that had already gone cold, when a voice asked if he could share the table. The place was crowded, and I looked up, ready to refuse. But then I saw his eyes, warm, steady, curious, as if they had already known me in another lifetime. I don't know why, but I said yes. And that single yes became the beginning of everything. He wasn't like anyone else I had met. He had a way of listening, not just with his ears, but with his whole presence. When he laughed, it wasn't loud, it was soft, genuine, the kind of laugh that sinks into your heart and makes you want to hear it again and again. We talked about books, about dreams, about places we wanted to see someday. Hours passed like minutes, and when I finally left, it felt like I was leaving behind a piece of myself with him. Days turned into weeks, and suddenly, he wasn't just someone I had met by chance. He became the rhythm of my days, the comfort of my nights. He would text me at sunrise just to remind me to eat breakfast, and call me at midnight to say goodnight. We built our love not on grand gestures, but on tiny, everyday promises. I still remember the first time he held my hand. We were walking home after a late-night movie, the streets quiet, the city asleep. His hand brushed mine, hesitated for a moment, and then held it firmly, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. That simple touch lit up everything inside me. I knew then, without any doubt, that he was the one. We began to dream aloud together. A small house with a garden, Sunday mornings filled with pancakes and music, maybe a dog running around the backyard. And a wedding, not extravagant, just filled with love, family, and laughter. He would look at me with eyes that promised forever, and I believed him with all my heart. Back then, my life felt like it was finally writing itself into a love story I had always longed for. Little did I know, that story would take a turn so dark, I would question everything I had ever believed. I never imagined that happiness could be so fragile, like glass, shining so beautifully in your hands, yet breaking without warning. For a while, my life felt perfect. We were planning the wedding, making lists of guests, laughing over silly arguments about flowers and songs. He would hold my hand and whisper, "Forever isn't long enough with you." And I believed him. I believed in us. But then came that night. The night that shattered everything. I was at home, folding away the dress I had just bought for one of our pre-wedding gatherings. My phone rang, and when I saw an unknown number, I almost didn't answer. Something inside me resisted, but I picked it up. The voice on the other end was flat, official, almost mechanical. A car accident. Critical injuries. They tried everything. He was gone. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even cry. It felt like the world had paused, like the air had been pulled out of the room. I kept shaking my head, whispering no again and again, as if denial could turn back time. My knees gave way, and I fell to the floor with the phone still pressed against my ear, listening to words that didn't feel real. The next days blurred into each other. Faces around me wept, people whispered condolences, but their voices seemed distant, muffled. I remember clutching his photograph against my chest, begging the universe to give him back. Nights were the hardest, lying awake, staring into the dark, waiting for a text or a call that would never come. His laughter that once filled my world now echoed like a ghost, haunting every corner of my heart. I kept replaying our last conversation, every word, every pause. He had told me he was tired, but that we'd meet tomorrow. Tomorrow. That word stabbed me endlessly because it never came. I went through his belongings like a thief of memories, his shirts that still carried his scent, his notebook with scribbled dreams, the watch he always wore. Each item felt sacred, yet unbearable. Grief wrapped around me like a shroud, heavy and suffocating. They say time heals. But time did not heal me, it only deepened the silence. People moved on, the world kept spinning, but I remained stuck in that night. In that single phone call that tore my soul apart. I thought I had lost the love of my life forever. I thought my story had ended in ashes. But what I didn't know was that this was only the beginning of a different kind of heartbreak, one that would change me in ways I could never have imagined. Grief had become my shadow. Weeks turned into months, and yet the weight of his absence clung to me like a second skin. People said I was getting better, that I was healing, but the truth was, I wasn't. I had only learned how to hide my pain. My smiles were rehearsed, my laughter hollow. Inside, I was still drowning. And then, one night, everything changed. It was late, the world outside quiet, and I was curled up on the couch, holding the book he had once given me. My phone buzzed on the table. I almost ignored it. Most nights I didn't have the strength to reply to anyone. But when I glanced at the screen, my heart stopped. It was his name. His name glowing in the dim light, just as it had before that night, before the accident. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. My hands trembled as I picked it up. And there it was, a single message. 2 words. I'm sorry. My breath caught in my chest. My mind screamed that it was impossible. He was gone. I had seen the grief in everyone's eyes, heard the finality in their voices. And yet, this message. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it. My first thought was that it had to be a cruel prank. Maybe someone had his phone, maybe this was some twisted joke. But then, more messages followed. I think of you every day. I never stopped loving you. My vision blurred with tears. These weren't random words. They carried the weight of secrets only he and I had shared. He mentioned the cafe where we first met, the silly nickname he once gave me, even the night we had stayed up talking until dawn. Details no one else knew. My heart was at war with itself. One part of me wanted to believe, wanted to rush to him, hold him, demand to know why he had stayed away. Another part of me recoiled in rage. If he was alive, then what had I been grieving? All this time? Had he watched me break apart, cry myself to sleep, whisper his name into the void, while he was out there, alive? The messages didn't stop. Each one felt like a knife, reopening wounds I thought had already scarred. Confusion mixed with anger, love tangled with betrayal. That night, as I sat staring at the glowing screen, one truth became clear: my fiancé hadn't died. He had lied. And with that realization, the storm inside me began to shift. My grief was no longer quiet, it was turning into something else. Something dangerous. Something like revenge. After that night, sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, his messages replayed in my mind like echoes I couldn't silence. Alive. Breathing. Writing to me. I should have felt relief, maybe even joy. But what I felt was something far darker, a gnawing hunger for answers. Why had he done this to me? Why had he let me bury him in my heart, only to resurrect himself through a glowing screen? I began searching. At first, quietly, as if ashamed of my own desperation. I revisited the places we once shared. The cafe where we met, the park bench. Where he first kissed my hand, the bookstore where he had secretly written my name inside the cover of a novel. Each place felt haunted, not by his absence, but by the possibility that he was still out there, watching me. I asked questions I never thought I would. Friends who had drifted away, neighbors who once smiled knowingly at us, suddenly, their eyes darted, their words stumbled. Some knew more than they admitted. Their silences screamed louder than any answer. And then, one evening, I overheard a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. A mutual acquaintance, drunk on too much wine, whispering that he had seen him, weeks after the accident. Alive. Smiling. With someone else by his side. My blood froze. That night, anger bloomed inside me, sharp and merciless. While I was breaking into pieces, clutching his photograph like a lifeline, he was out there. Living. My grief had been a stage he had scripted, and I, blind and faithful, had played my part perfectly. I began tracing patterns, looking for clues in the messages he sent. Times, locations, hints tucked between words. Slowly, the truth unfolded. Like a map leading me closer to him. Every breadcrumb he left behind pulled me deeper into a labyrinth I had never asked to enter. I wanted to confront him, to demand why he had chosen to vanish and bury me under a lie. But more than that, I wanted him to feel what I had felt. The suffocating emptiness, the nights of clawing loneliness, the cruel silence of a phone that never rang. The discovery was undeniable now, he hadn't died. He had abandoned me. My tears no longer tasted of grief alone, they carried bitterness, fury, and a hunger for justice. I promised myself then. I would find him. And when I did, I wouldn't beg for his love or cry for his return. No, I would make him face the wreckage he had left behind. The night I finally saw him, my heart nearly forgot how to beat. It was in a quiet street, far from the places we once shared. I had followed the trail, his careless words in the messages, the whispers of people who had seen him. And there he was. Alive. Breathing. As real as the day I first met him. For a moment, my body froze. My mind screamed to run to him, to collapse into his arms, to let relief wash away every tear I had shed. But the anger in my chest roared louder. My hands shook, not with love, but with betrayal. He turned and saw me. The color drained from his face. His lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, he looked afraid, not of the world, but of me. How could you? My voice cracked, raw from the weight of months of silence. How could you let me believe you were dead? Do you know what you did to me? To us. Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wanted him to see my pain, not my weakness. He tried to speak, his voice low, trembling. I didn't know how else to escape. I felt trapped. The wedding, the expectations. I wasn't ready. I thought, if I disappeared, it would be easier for both of us. Easier. That word shattered something inside me. Easier, for him. While I tore myself apart night after night, he was hiding, building a life outside of mine. You loved me enough to plan forever with me, I whispered, my voice shaking, but not enough to stay. His eyes glistened, but I saw no regret deep enough to match my loss. He reached for me, but I stepped back. The space between us felt heavier than death itself. Every promise he had ever made crumbled in that moment. The mornings we dreamed of, the wedding vows we whispered in secret, they all turned into ashes. I buried you once, I said, my voice steady now, cold with finality. And maybe I'll bury you again. But this time, it won't be your death I grieve, it will be the love I wasted on you. The silence that followed was suffocating. He bowed his head, unable to meet my gaze. I turned away, each step carrying the weight of 1,000 nights of sorrow, but also the birth of something new. That confrontation didn't heal me. But it gave me clarity. He wasn't the man I lost, he was the lie I finally uncovered. When I walked away from him that night, the air felt different and heavier, yet strangely clearer. My heart was still raw, still bleeding from the truth I had uncovered, but beneath the pain, something new had begun to grow. Strength. 4 months. I had lived like a ghost, mourning a man who was never truly gone. I had wept into pillows, screamed into empty rooms, begged the universe for answers. But now I realized. I had been grieving the wrong thing. It wasn't his death that broke me, it was his betrayal. And betrayal is something you can fight back from. At first, revenge burned hot inside me. I wanted him to feel the same suffocating loneliness, the same nights of silence that had swallowed me whole. I imagined exposing him, stripping away the lies he had woven so carefully. But as days passed, I understood something deeper. True revenge wasn't about destroying him. It was about refusing to let him destroy me any longer. I stopped answering his messages. The desperate apologies, the half-hearted explanations, the pathetic "I miss you." Every word was a thread trying to pull me back into his web. I cut them all. For the first time since the so-called accident, I took control of my story. I returned to the places that once hurt to see, the cafe, the park, the quiet street where we had once walked hand in hand. But this time, I went alone. And instead of drowning in memories, I breathed them out, one by one. Each place no longer belonged to him, it belonged to me, to the woman I had become. The reckoning wasn't loud or violent. It was quiet, steady. Like a sunrise after a storm. My revenge was my survival. My revenge was my refusal to be defined by his lies. And yet, I know I left him with something heavier than any punishment I could have planned: guilt. Because he will always remember. The woman who loved him enough to dream of forever, and the woman who walked away when forever turned out to be a lie. He will remember my eyes, not filled with tears, but with strength he could never break. In the end, he lost me, not to death, but to the truth. And that loss will haunt him far longer than grief ever haunted me. That was my reckoning. And in that reckoning, I found myself again. They say grief never truly leaves you, it only changes shape. And I think that's true. For a long time, my grief was a black hole, pulling me deeper and deeper until I could barely breathe. But now it feels different. It no longer consumes me. It has become a scar, a reminder of what I survived. I once believed my life had ended with his so-called death. I thought my heart would never learn to beat without him. But I see now, it wasn't his absence that almost destroyed me. It was my own silence, my refusal to let go of a man who had already let go of me. I look back at the girl I used to be, the girl who waited for his messages, who dreamed of forever, who believed love was enough to hold two people together. I grieve her more than I ever grieved him. She was innocent, fragile, full of faith. And yet, I'm proud of her, too. Because without her blind devotion, I wouldn't be the woman I am today. The woman I am now knows that love should never come at the cost of your soul. That real love doesn't vanish in the night, leaving you with nothing but lies. That sometimes, letting go is not the end of love, it is the beginning of self-respect. People ask me if I regret it all. If I regret loving him, trusting him, giving him every piece of my heart. My answer is no. Because love, even when misplaced, teaches us something. He taught me what betrayal feels like, yes, but he also taught me how deeply I am capable of loving. And one day, I know I will give that love again. But this time, to someone who deserves it. As for him, I don't wish him harm anymore. That's not my burden to carry. His punishment is his own conscience, his own memories of the woman he betrayed. And I believe, in some quiet hour of the night, he will think of me, the girl who wept for him, and the woman who walked away from him. And in that thought, he will feel the weight of everything he lost. My story isn't about him anymore. It's about me. About how I buried a love that was never real, and in the ashes, I found something stronger, myself. And that is the truest ending I could ever have hoped for.